Well, I'm not sure what was the purpose to inviting either me or Mr. Shmuley to this program, because obviously we are on two entirely different wavelengths. Mr. Shmuley is in the business, which is not surprising, of character assassination. He's in the business of libel. That's his job, because where he have to confront the facts, he would be in a very difficult situation.
Shout out to Piers Morgan for getting Rabbi Shmuley to sit down with Norm Finkelstein. I want you to do Michael Rappaport versus Norm for the sequel.
God. Right.
Apparently Rappaport is up for it. Michael Rappaport was like offering to he was like, I'll fly you all the way out here if you're going to say this to my face. I'm like, bro, I will take a free trip to Tel Aviv. I've got a passport. I'll say all this to your face.
Welcome to both of you. Let me start, if I may, with you, Norman Finkelstein. Good to have you back on Uncensored.
Thank you for having me.
We seem to be reaching a point here where something has to give. Either Israel stops obliterating Gaza and killing so many innocent people in the process, or I'm not sure what the alternative is. How do you read where we are with this war?
There are many ways to read it. You can read it politically, you can read it militarily, you can read it strategically, or you can read it from a point of view of human rights and international law, so long as it bears on human rights. Now, when it comes to the very last consideration, I think it's very clear how we should read it. Namely, the International Court of Justice, the supreme judicial body in the world, has said that Israel is under two obligations. Obligation number one is to honor the laws of war in what it's doing in Gaza. And obligation number two, Israel has to provide humanitarian aid and assistance to the people of Gaza. Those are its two obligations under international law. The court also ruled that Israel is plausibly committing genocide, and there is no evidence whatsoever, zero evidence, that since the court ruling, Israel has changed its tactics or its strategy in Gaza. So as of now, as we speak, Israel is still, by the conclusion of 15 judges in the International Court of Justice, 15 of the 17 judges, Israel is committing genocide or plausibly committing genocide, and it's not honoring its obligations as they were spelled out by the International Court of Justice.
Okay, so can we pause it really quickly?
This morning.
Because it's going to devolve from here, right? There's not going to be quite as much of a room for Norm to make a full point. I mean, he will, but it's very combative from here on out. Everything that he says is just facts. They're real, like, and I know it's annoying, but he says the facts. It's like, that's like a lame, like, dude bro chat argument. He's rooting, but really he's rooting it in international law, which I think is it's something that never gets dealt with for the rest of this interaction, right? It's like Rabbi Shmuley's just gonna like kick and scream about how it's all like, lies and anti-Semitism, and basically I think that if you are not aware at all with the situation, you can just come down with the fact that the better dressed man makes all of the better points throughout the entire exchange. And I mean I'm not trying to take away from the obvious gravity of the situation. It's just, what an eyesore is that white suit, Gavin.
When we booked you for this debate, you called Norman Finkelstein an anti-Semite. You said, "You have my word that God willing, I will digitally decapitate, digitally disembowel, and digitally destroy him." Do you think that was the right kind of rhetoric before you try and debate such a serious matter?
Gotta love Piers Morgan coming in there too and be like, is this really the appropriate way to go about such an exchange?
Bro, he's so British. This is what actually works. This is why some of this is able to go all right, because Piers Morgan is so British and Rabbi Shmuley is such a shithead that, like, he just is. He's like, how could you do what? This man is sitting here. He's trying to engage with you in a civil conversation, and you're over here calling him, slanderous. You're being, you're hurling mud at him and all this kind of stuff. He's like totally beside himself. Piers Morgan is British, so he's the penultimate pearl clutcher when it comes to like civil discord. It's like, should we genocide these people or not? Let's talk about it with our suits on while sitting down. Damn it! Don't lose your candor, boy. Damn it. That's the kind of energy that he gives, like a true Brit. Anyway, I think it actually does work in Norm Finkelstein's favor, because while he's far more humorous and far more successful at like dry wit throughout this exchange, he also just his like blood pressure is that of a normal individual, right? He doesn't freak out.
Well, what's great about Finkelstein is he does like to get in the gutter. We've read some of those great tweets of him going after opponents. And I mean, even on our own show, he's viciously attacked people like Bill Maher and Ben Shapiro. But you're right, Zach, when it actually comes time to sit down and have a discussion, he does keep it classy. He sticks to the facts, and he doesn't just immediately go in the gutter with ad hominem attacks from the very jump, which is what Shmuley is about to do, as you guys are going to see.
First of all, thank you for having me back, Piers. It's nice to see you. And Norm, I hope you don't mind if I call you Norm. You can please call me Shmuley. Norman Finkelstein is on the show for only one reason. If the journalistic idiom that Jews are news is true, because Israel's this big, it gets this much attention, then how much more so Jewish anti-Semites get the brightest headlights. Norman Finkelstein is the foremost Jewish anti-Semite on planet Earth. He actually attacked his own parents, whose only crime was to be Jewish. Their entire family was annihilated in Warsaw. They're not victims. They hated Germans and wanted them dead. He didn't think to himself, maybe my parents wanted the Germans to suffer, to stop the war, to break the will of the German people, to stop murdering, gassing 10,000 Jews per day. His hatred of the Jewish people has extended even to his own family. He calls Israel a satanic state that comes from the boils of hell. He calls it a vandal state. He said that the 15 people murdered in the Charlie
Again, just off the bat, poisoning the well with a bunch of cherry-picked garbage to try to paint Norm Finkelstein as some unserious, hateful guy, you know, trying to turn the audience against him before he really even is able to make an argument besides just outlaying the facts, as we, you know, discussed.
Hebdo massacres. He has no sympathy for them whatsoever. But this is the most telling thing of all, and you discussed this the last time. He said, on October 7th, hours after the massacre, 1,200 Jews started, he wrote, "It warms every fiber of my soul to see the children of Gaza smiling as their arrogant Jewish supremacists that have been humbled. The stars above in heaven are looking down. Glory, glory, hallelujah." Let's just go through this. 400 women shot in the genitals, their breasts cut off as terrorists played with their bloody breasts like a football. Glory, hallelujah.
There's no evidence for this.
Yeah, I haven't even heard that allegation. I mean, obviously,
it's not true.
I've heard the stuff about sexual assault, but playing with their bloody breasts. Like, you're just making shit up now. You sound like a deranged fanfic artist in your mom's basement trying to get yourself off by just coming up with the most gruesome and horrifically, like, sexual crime of all time. Like, this is so unserious.
The lost Eminem track from the 90s.
Women shot in their genitals, Norm. Glory. You should be a televangelist. Glory. Hallelujah. Children burned to death and beheaded. Glory. Hallelujah. Come on. Come on. You're a fair person, Piers. This is exactly what your friend Douglas Murray said, because he refuses to debate Norman Finkelstein. He called him a sociopath. He said Norman Finkelstein is a psychotic. He's not on your show because he's a serious academic. Wolfgang Benz, professor of Ellingen, who was one of the foremost German historians of the Holocaust, said the only thing interesting about Norman Finkelstein is that he needs a psychiatrist.
Okay, well, look,
Professor Wolfgang, wait, Professor Wolfgang.
I want to just ask you this, though. You see, it's interesting. Norman Finkelstein gave I thought, a pretty measured argument in response to my first question. You've gone ad hominem immediately and attacked the man, not the issue, and not the question that I asked you, which is to respond to what he was saying, which is a growing feeling around the world, by the way, that Israel is now committing, as he put it, as a court said, a plausible genocide. I don't happen to think it is genocide they're doing, but what I do think is happening is that there is a shameful number of innocent women and children being slaughtered on a daily basis, and I don't see what the end game is other than the obliteration of most of Gaza and many people living there.
Okay, can we pause it
Answer
really quick?
that point.
So let me.
Let's unpack who amongst the population's politic has Piers Morgan's perspective, right? Because he's not one of us. Somebody who resolutely opposes violence, somebody who resolutely he refuses to call it a genocide. We all see that with our own eyes, right? But he has enough of what he perceives as like middle of the road humanity to be like, okay, we can't allow women to have C-sections with no painkillers. We can't have 10,000 children killed. We can't have, dozens of amputations a day with, Motrin instead of any kind of real, like, you guys, can you imagine, guys? I want everybody to think about that. We're forcing people to go through basically things that they do in Saw movies, okay? With no pain medication. Like, think about that horror, right? So that has reached the mainstream disaffected liberal class, who I think that Piers Morgan represents. What he wants is proper justification from Israel, and he wants to have his blinders on so he can't see what's happening, right? This is the kind of guy that loved Obama politics in the Middle East, right? Don't want none, don't see none, don't see. Oh, okay, yeah, we're fine. The United States isn't even really at war anymore. We're just holding down a tumultuous region. You know what I mean? That's the kind of shit that he loved. Meanwhile, we were still killing a bunch of men, women, and children, extrajudicially assassinating U.S. citizens. That's the kind of stuff that he wants. He wants to be convinced why it's okay for Israel to destroy Gaza. They have done such a horrible job that even somebody who wants them to justify it and rationalize it to him, they can't, right? So that's how bad they're doing. That's how obvious what they're doing is.
Let me answer your question directly. First of all, when you quote President Lula of Brazil, he is a criminal who served in jail for corruption. He has zero credibility. He also knows nothing about history. 10,000 Jews were gassed a day for 4 years after the Wannsee Conference in January 1942. To compare that to Gaza is an abomination. Secondly, Norman Finkelstein is a liar. The International Court of Justice specifically said that Israel is not committing a genocide. So when you tell me, why do I go after ad hominem? I'm questioning his academic credentials. He just lied on international TV. South Africa sued to get the ICJ to declare that Israel's committing a genocide, and they said they're not committing a genocide, and they said they would not stop the Israeli offensive. That is a straight out lie.
Okay, well, all right. If you're going to call, hang on. No, if you're going to call him a liar, amongst other things you've called him, I'm going to go back to Norman Finkelstein and get him to respond to that.
Also, could we pause it really quickly for everybody, just so I can bring the receipts that are correct? The part of the fun to react to this is that so International Court of Justice finds genocide case against Israel plausible, orders it to stop violations. So anyway, before we get into this whole article, you can look it up, you can read it all for yourself. It stopped short of telling Israel to halt its military campaign in Gaza, but it did order Israel to take immediate steps to protect civilians in Gaza. That decision is part of a larger case brought to The Hague by South Africa, which alleges that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza in the conflict that began after Hamas attacked Israel in October and killed 1,200 people and took many hostages. So you guys can read about it there. Norm Finkelstein said nothing incorrect, and Shmuley's calling him a liar for nothing.
Would you like me to respond now?
Yes, please. Yeah, I think it's only reasonable you should. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure what was the purpose to inviting either me or Mr. Shmuley to this program, because obviously we are on two entirely different wavelengths. Mr. Shmuley is in the business, which is not surprising, of character assassination. He's in the business of libel. That's his job, because where he have to confront the facts, he would be in a very difficult situation. So let me make one clarification. None of my remarks bear on my personal opinions. I simply am repeating what the documentary record shows. Now, according to Mr. Shmuley, I am a liar because, according to Mr. Shmuley, the International Court of Justice explicitly concluded that Israel was not committing a genocide. Now, I would say that Mr. Shmuley is suffering from what I would call a Judeo-dementia, because there is no possibility on earth that any rational human being could have read the opinion or the ruling rendered by the International Court of Justice after the South Africa application and after the oral proceedings. There is no possibility on earth that any rational person can conclude that the International Court of Justice ruled that Israel was not committing a genocide. So we now have two difficulties. Number one, Mr. Shmuley seems to think his purpose to being on the program is to personally attack me, the Latin term ad hominem attacks. Number two, Rabbi Shmuley seems incapable of processing very basic facts. If Mr. Shmuley believes that the International Court of Justice ruled explicitly that Israel was not committing genocide, if that's what he truly believes, then I would say he's suffering from some form of Judeo-dementia.
Okay, let me bring in.
May I respond?
Yes, you may. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Piers. It's interesting, Piers, that you and Norm are saying that I went ad hominem. No, I did not. I quoted his own words of Jewish anti-Semitism, vitriol, which are so extreme that they're shocking. I told you, he called his own parents haters of Germans. Not that Germans hated his parents and annihilated his family. His parents hated the Germans. But now he just now says, I suffer from Jewish dementia. Notice, it's not Shmuley who suffers dementia. It's always Jewish dementia. It's always Jews. Norman Finkelstein has now accused Israel of 5 different genocides. 1982, he accused Israel of genocide in Lebanon. It went on 2006, 2009, 2015. Now, this is the 5th. That means we Jews, I always thought Jews suck at sports and PR. We suck at genocide because we've attempted it 5 times. And yet in all the Arab-Israeli wars, Jews and Arabs together, the numbers that have died, including terrorists, are less than 100,000. Bashar al-Assad next door killed 600,000 in 2 years. We Jews ought to go to him and ask him, how do we finally do this? Because according to Norm, we've tried it for 30 years and we can't do it. In fact, since 1967, when Gaza came under Israeli control.
This is not the own he thinks it is. He's like, oh, well, we definitely did all that shit, but if we were trying to genocide, wouldn't we be pretty bad at? Oh, no, it was just an indiscriminate bombing campaign. We were trying to get rid of them all, just most of them.